love me so much more than I could ever know. Your love is deeper than this world will ever show. And all of life's beauty shines around this moment now. The sky and the cliffs, they seem to change my life somehow. And I will never be the same, will never be the same. Whoa, I will never be the same, never be the same ever again. Here I am waiting, Lord, my life is just for you. Please unfold all the plans that you would have me do. And if all the world's just a breath and nothing's here to stay, and all of the love we feel will save us anyway. And I will never be the same, will never be the same. Whoa, I will never be the same, will never be the same ever again.
Hello and welcome. Cheers, everybody. Good to have you back on SDA Q&A. My very special guest today is James Baber. Great to have you here, Jim. Really good to have you on the show.
Good to be here.
And, of course, Jim's channel, Academy Apologia, is incredible. And I encourage everybody to go and take a look at that channel. The thing I love about your channel, Jim, is that you can literally just pick any of the episodes and they're great. I think when you started out, you had a focus on, you were going to look at other faiths and religions, and if you stumble across those, they're fascinating as well. Every single show is a winner, so it's well done.
Yeah, thanks. And yeah, once in a while I'll still do something on other faiths. I'm going to, as you know, we were talking last week, and I couldn't come on last week because I was speaking at a conference on Islam, and I did a talk on the Quran and the pseudepigrapha, which is some research I've been doing over a while. So I was showing the pseudepigraphal writings that have worked their way into the Quran, which, well, claims to be a very unique book that only Allah could produce. And that was what I was showing is, no, it's not so unique. It's in the pseudepigrapha. So yeah, I'm thinking about turning that into a video soon.
A show as well. Yeah. Was it videoed? And
yes.
Yeah, so
yes,
you got to use snippets from it as well.
Yeah. I think I'm just going to record my own, so I can show the graphics better myself than they did in the studio, in the conference office. But yeah, it is online.
Yeah. Oh, good. I'll go and search that out. Also, today's topic, we're going to be discussing Adventist Church membership. By the way, we had another program scheduled for today. We're going to be talking about Charlie Kirk, if we couldn't get you, Jim, and so that one's has been rescheduled for next week. So just put that in your calendars, everybody. The day before today, next week. Does that make sense? And that's been a very polarizing topic. So I hesitate even doing a program on Charlie Kirk, because I've just noticed that people, of all the topics that I've seemed to manage to get people on the same table at least to have a discussion, this topic seems to be the most difficult for people to discuss and just listen to someone else's point of view. So it's a fully charged one, that one. And I've hesitated at doing it at all because of that. Now, so today's topic, we're looking at basically the statistics. Adventists claim, I've heard numbers up to 28 million, 25 million, but roughly they claim 25 million in their membership. One thing I want to hear from the audience today is, have you left the church and have you taken your name off the roll, or is it still on the roll somewhere? Because I think there's a discussion to be had for going that extra mile, that little bit of extra energy it will take, and literally take your name off the roll, because it is being used in these statistics. I think on your show, which is, if everyone after this show goes and watches Academy Apologia number 139 and 139B, I think it might be called. A. So there's two shows there, 139, and you do a very deep dive into this. And I'm not sure if it was on your show or somewhere around that time when I watched it. I also read somewhere that over 40 plus million Adventists have left the church since the late 1960s. I don't know if you've heard that stat, but wow. So there's a lot of formers out there. And most people that I talk to that have left the Adventist church have not actually taken their name off the roll. They're like, I couldn't be bothered, I've left. But I think there's a case to be had for people to actually take it off so they can just stop manipulating these numbers. Now, Carrie Nennick has written, and hi, Carrie, good to have you here. Can't wait to have you guys back on the show one day as well. And Carrie mentions absolutely no way the numbers are even close to right. We dropped our membership 2 years ago. I bet good money that our membership would still be active several years from now, even if we stayed away. And that's a point too, because sometimes people take their name off and yet it's not removed. So, we did a great show with Rochelle Anonymous a while back on how to take your name off.
Oh, good.
Rochelle, if you're watching, maybe you can just remind me what number and season that was, and I will and bring it up on the screen as well. And one last quick little preamble. Rochelle does a fantastic job with SDA&A Book Club, and it's run randomly. That's not necessarily every week, but keep an eye out for that. And on our SDA Q&A Facebook group, she is running a survey to look at what book to do next. We've just finished reading Whitewashed by Sidney Cleveland, and Dale Ratzlaff, who I think you met and got to know from former Adventist Fellowship and other great ministries, has written the foreword to that. And I think they may have even published this book. And there's another great book called Whiteout by Dirk Anderson, which is very similar, not similar as in boringly so, but it's brilliant. So Whitewashed and Whiteout. And that's the one we just finished. So I'm not sure what is coming next, but it'll be great. So Rochelle, just let me know in the comments when the next book club comes. So, there's your puppy in the background there, coming to hang out.
Yeah, he decided to come visit me. Yeah.
So welcome everyone. Make sure you add in your comments in the chat there, your comments, your thoughts on this topic. And James, I'm going to hand it over to you to perhaps give us a little bit of info about you. So we've got, since our last interview, we've got a lot of new members. We may even have around 2,000 more people in the group since our last interview. So a lot of people know you, love you. There might be some people watching that go, oh, this guy seems interesting. What's his story? What's Academy Apologia? Give us a 1 minute, account of your history and who you are. And then I want you to kick into to today's topic.
Yeah. So for those that don't know me, I've never been a Seventh-day Adventist. And I have been a Christian apologist for about 30 years, engaging other groups. Started with Jehovah's Witnesses, went to Mormons, the Church of Christ, that's the Church of Christ led by Alex and Thomas Campbell, Alexander Campbell, that is. And it just splinters out into other religions. So I've been doing Christian apologetics for roughly 30 years. Kind of hit a low spot at one point and spent a lot of time doing, if you heard us in the intro, I still do some with the Muslim Christian group that I'm with. And if you want to find that video, if you look at ministry2muslims.com, you'll look at the conference that just happened about a week ago. And then I'm in, I think, conference session number 2, where I spoke on the Quran and the pseudepigrapha. So I still do a lot with Islam. And but I was at a low point and I wasn't doing too much with Islam. And Jehovah's Witnesses around here won't even talk to me. They see me, they literally run away. And they get on their phones. Here's that guy again, and he's got our books. He's showing us false prophecies. Run, and that's what they do. So I'm sitting right here. This was like in probably late 2019. I was like, well, what can I do? I feel like I have all this knowledge and experience, street work. What can I do? Stumbled across a video on Adventist. I don't even remember if that video was pro or con Adventist, but I thought, here I go. Because there weren't a lot of people doing Christian apologetics for Adventists. There were some, but not a lot, as compared to, I'll say, Jehovah's Witnesses and Mormons, which is well-trod ground. So I thought, okay, I'm going to go here. And I never planned on making any videos. It was never my intent, because I know video making is a lot of work. And I thought, I'm not sure I want to bite off that piece of work now. But I started commenting with Adventists. That's what I would do every day. I'd start my day off in the morning, turn on the computer, and I'm dealing with Adventists, sharing the gospel with them, sharing who the true Jesus is with them. Finally, something happened, and I had one Adventist that just kept just spreading false things about me. And I said, dude, you got to stop this. I said, if you don't stop it, I'm gonna my first video was on Li and the her amalgamation comment from the 1860s. And that started it right there. So I've been making videos ever since. I'm on a 10-day cycle. Every 10 days, I have a video come out. And then in between those, every 10 days, I have a short video come out now. So every 5 days, something's coming out. It's either a short or a video. And that's the cycle I'm on. I'm almost up to 200 videos now. I got a short video coming out tonight. And if you could see my desk is literally just jam-packed full of books and stuff. I'm doing research right now in Seventh-day Adventist hymn books. Like here is within reach. Here's the very first hymn book of the Seventh-day Adventist Church, the official hymn book from 1861. Hymns for those that keep the commandments of God. And so I've got all the original Adventist books around. So I'm researching that right now. But we're talking about numbers. We're talking about statistics of the church. So that got me in. I got interested in that too. And so I thought, I'm retired now. So I had a day job where I did analytical type statistical work, looking at numbers, drawing conclusions, making relationships between those numbers to tell a story, or maybe even not to tell a story. That's sometimes valuable too. And so I thought, I'm going to treat Adventist annual reports like I would if I was at work in a project. And I did. So I collected all the annual reports that were available. I think I went back to about 2019 at that point to 2024, which is 2023 data. And I thought, okay, well, let me look at it. What do I want to know? And so I started with members. Adventist Online love to say, we've got 22 million members. Look what a great church we are, rah, rah, rah. Okay, maybe you do. I mean, at that level, the Seventh-day Adventist Church, if we're to believe those numbers, is bigger than the Mormon Church, bigger than Jehovah's Witnesses. They are a very large religion. So, okay, well, what do the numbers tell me? So I started looking at membership numbers. And I quickly came to the conclusion that membership number, that count, is absolutely false. It's fantasy, it's fiction. After I did that video, Defeating Adventism 139, I thought, I got to get a definition of a member. What's a member in the Seventh-day Adventist Church? So I wrote David Trim's office, statistical analysis, and dear David Trim in office, I said, I want to know. I told him I'm reading one of your reports, and churches are reporting members. I want you to. Can you tell me? I said, I'm making the assumption that direction comes from your office to all the churches, that you've defined what a member is, so that when you get that data in, it's a consistent number and format around the globe. I said, so that's my assumption. Is my assumption right? Is my assumption wrong? What is it? And I got a really weak answer back from them. And basically, the churches themselves can pretty much define what a member is. And a member is just somebody who went to church at one time and got baptized. So I could go to the Seventh-day Adventist Church down the street from my house. I can go get baptized this Sabbath. And I will now forever be counted as a member, even though I will never grace the door of that church for the next 1, 3, 5, or even 10 years. But I will be counted as a member. So that's how members work. So I was like, when I start thinking about that, I'm like, there's a lot of missing, dead, vacant people on your rolls. You don't have 22 million members. And so I found something that was, I thought, really interesting. In their archives, I can find sheets, like data fact sheets for each Seventh-day Adventist church. I can go, down underneath the divisions to the conference, right to the church. And so there's a video I'm going to be producing here soon, Peter, that I've been working on for the last several weeks. And that's this. I went on YouTube and I found, Seventh-day Adventist churches love to do their Sabbath live streams. So I found 3. I just picked 3. I thought 3 is a good number. And I want 3 churches that actually show me the congregation with cameras. That I can start counting bodies. I can see the front of the congregation, and at some point they'll pan around. I can see the side, I can see the back, I can see the left, I can see the right. It's like, okay, I can stop it, go forward and back, and I can start counting. And I'm looking at this church in Jamaica, whose numbers are supposed to be 514 members. And I'm like, I'm generously going to say I can count 125 people here. But I said, but it says 514.
Wow.
And I got 125. So I put a comment in their Sabbath video, told them what I did. I said, hey, I got your official fact and data sheet. It says 514 members. But I said, I count about 125 at most. And I was very cognizant not to count on communion days, because I know from my experience in going to a Seventh-day Adventist church, when foot washing services end, about half the church doesn't even show up. Right? So
Even less.
So I was real careful and say, okay, I'm not counting those days. One of my churches had a communion. It's like day, and I was like, okay, I'm skipping that because that doesn't even count because I know half the church is gone. So I'll look at other videos, and I looked at them over. I looked at three services, not just one, but three, to get a good trend. That's what we teach in business. 3 data points is at least a trend. And it's like, well, here I am, 125, 514. I looked at another church. I'll get my stats in front of me. And this church, 2,394 members. I am lucky if I can get 200 when I count. Matter of fact, I look at the building and I look at the parking lot. I go, you can't even, if 2,000 people, if just 2,000 showed up, the fire department will close you down. And then there's one more church I looked at in Kentucky. And this church actually wrote me back. They have 273 members on the books. And I wrote that church, and I said, no, I can't even count 100. I said, I'm pretty close to 100, but not even 100. But you report 273. Why? And that church wrote me back, and they said, well, it's like this. It's like a gym membership. A lot of people, and this is their answer. They said a lot of people sign up, and well, they just don't come anymore. And I thought that was a really interesting way to respond to it. So I'm going to start doing a bunch of videos like this, where I'm going to find these churches doing their Sabbath services. I'm going to pull their sheet. I'm going to start counting, and I'm just going to start making videos, probably 3 churches at a time. But this first one here is probably going to come out, I don't know, in the next, few weeks. But no, these numbers are false.
Yeah,
the churches don't even know what a member is.
Yeah.
Largely, it's just someone that was baptized once. And I'm sure many of you in this chat room here, even as I've even seen on the chat, have asked that their name be removed. And I'm with you. I'm not surprised if the pastor says, hey, I got your letter, but then they don't really remove the name.
Yeah. Yeah. You've definitely got to ask them to get back in touch with you after the next, say, when you have your next board meeting, get back in touch and confirm that you have taken my name off. And you've also got to say, I don't want to enter into any dialogue. I've made my mind up.
And there's a reason for this too. And I think you've already alluded to it. You know it. And I know this because I worked in a bureaucracy. The Seventh-day Adventist Church is really organized in a bureaucratic structure. And in a bureaucratic structure, the power is within the individual work units. In this case, I want to call them churches, who have the most numbers.
Yes.
Numbers equals power in a bureaucratic organizational model. Well, that's Seventh-day Adventism. So it's to the advantage of these individual pastors who come to you and say, hey, I hear you. Oh, yeah, I took your name off, but they really didn't.
Yes.
So they can report that they got all these members because, remember what I just said, that's power.
Yes.
That's authority in a bureaucratic model. And that's job security too, by the way.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they continue to exist. So you can have a church reporting 500 members and 100 show up and have that great disparity.
Yeah. That's why I say there's a case to be discussed, and I'm interested in your thoughts now or later, for people who've left the church but haven't taken their name off to actually do that. And because your name is being used as a power move in like you say, a bureaucratic. I remember even when I was a young boy in the early 80s, there were a lot of churches in this area where I live, around Avondale, Currambong, where Ellen White lived for nearly 10 years over here in the late 1800s. There are many churches within a 30, 40-minute radius of me. And I would go to a lot of the different churches doing music, and I would notice that, you'd sing at one of the churches and there'd be enough room for 200 to 300 members, and there were always only 20 to 40 maximum. So you'll probably, and that was constantly every weekend. And people might say now, as they've said to you, they're just not coming anymore. But I'm suggesting that has been the case since the 80s. When the church really, in my humble opinion, split into 2 churches in one. our gospel Adventists following Des Ford on the one side,
Yeah.
and what we call the concerned brethren on the other side that followed the Standish brothers, Andreasen, and I think that traditional Adventists have a leg to stand on when they say, look, you gospel Adventists are unraveling our church. And I think it'd be interesting as you explore this further. So I would even back then, I would say to the pastors, what's your actual membership here? There's only 40 people. And they would say, 200. And I would then week after week, year after year, wonder where those people were. And I think in your study, as you move forward, it'll be fascinating if you get a feel of a percentage wise. I mean, I would feel like there was at least a quarter were only turning up of their claimed number. And I think you'll get a sense for that as time goes by.
Yeah, that's why there's a Defeating Adventism 139A.
Yeah.
Because it was someone that sent me a video, and this goes right along with what you're saying. It was a video. Ty Gibson was being interviewed, and these four young men were in part of the video. He says, we don't have a million members. He goes, at most we probably have 6.5 million. And I thought, that's like you're saying, that's about a quarter, right? And I was like, okay, you're probably right. I don't know what he based his number on. I'm kind of assuming he has some kind of look into actual average church attendance.
Yeah. And
that the delta between, if you get an accurate church attendance number and a membership number, is huge.
Yes.
Right. You're right. I think it's probably it's going to be 70-75% inflated.
Yeah.
But see, this presents a problem for Adventism. Because you got all these Adventists running around, very proud of their church. We got 22 million members, right? That's a good number. It's a big number.
Yeah.
And they like to tout that number. What would happen if the Seventh-day Adventist Church actually stopped reporting these false numbers and actually reported true numbers? So let's just say, for the sake of this conversation, it's not 6. Let's just choose a round number of 10. Say it's 10 million.
Yeah.
I think that would dispirit the average Adventist. They would be like, what?
Yeah, exactly.
And I think it would just like deflate them. So Adventists, I mean, the first rule for hole digging is to quit digging the hole.
Yeah.
But they can't.
No.
Yeah, they just keep
they
these
love numbers, and they absolutely can't stop talking about the numbers.
No.
And it's an interesting thing. I'm just going to bring up something Stephen Beagles just wrote, which I think is an interesting tell. He says, and I'll just give my thought on this, then I'm interested in yours. He says, will Jim admit that an Adventist can be a spirit-filled Christian? I'm guessing that Jim will say, yeah. If you know me, you know that I will say yes. Of course, an Adventist can be a spirit-filled Christian. But what's popped into my head as Gospel Adventist Stephen Beagles wrote that is that it's like you can be a fan, spirit-filled country music guitar player, but you're in a heavy metal band. And sure, you can love country music, but you're not going to be very effective in trying to talk the band into the heavy metal band into becoming a country band. And you're not going to be very effective sharing your love of country music if people only see the moniker above you, the brand, heavy metal band. And this is what I was going to say about that, which is a different spin on when I've normally shared this little analogy, is unless these spirit-filled Christian gospel Adventists within... Oh, I've lost James there for a second. Unless these spirit-filled gospel Adventists actually speak their gospelness into the church, which they were doing in the 60s and 70s and even before, the numbers will continue to decline. It's interesting, in the 70s, the Adventist church over here had a bit of a boom because it was following the big revolution that came out of California, the Jesus People movement. And and numbers were really swelling in Adventist churches. And those people were carrying a gospel Adventist message, a new, the traditional Adventists call it a new theology, which it is. But my point to Stephen is that, yes, there are spirit-filled Christians in the Adventist church, but they are not shouting their spirit-filled gospel from the rooftops. They meet in quiet corners because they know that if they do share this unique gospel take on Adventism, they shut down. They lose their jobs. Their books are cancelled. And so they can very well say, there are Adventists that understand the gospel, but they are marginal, they are declining, and unless they speak up soon, they, and this is my point, will contribute to this decline because they are not offering up publicly a shining light for people to connect with and follow.
So let me just make sure I can answer him directly myself too. And what I would say is, if you as an Adventist still hold Adventist doctrine and of the three angels' messages, and I'm quoting from chapter Belief 11 in the 28 Beliefs book, pages 196 to 201, where the three angels' messages are defined. If that is the gospel message that you're thinking of in terms of being an Adventist, I'd say, no, I'm sorry, you're not a Christian, because that's not the Christian gospel. Along with that also is the Adventist Jesus. This Jesus who is atoning for sins right now, starting in 1844, atoning for sins right now, did not atone for a single sin on the cross. That's what traditional Adventism teaches. So I don't know your views on those two topics. But I say, if the answer is yes, then I would say, then my reply to you would be, no, I'm sorry, that doesn't meet the criteria.
Yeah. In fact, sorry, you're frozen. Sorry, your camera has frozen. Oh, there, you're back. Sorry, we missed about the last 20 seconds there. The thing that I've discovered, Jim, is that you are correct. I have spent 5 years, over 500 interviews, and I reckon at least half of them, I've at some point in a conversation said, look, there's a gem of Adventism. There are people in the Adventist church that do grasp the gospel, and I'll still stand by that. Of course, there are people everywhere that grasp the gospel, but it's only when they jettison Ellen White, jettison the pillars of the Adventist church, that they are free to truly understand the gospel. And you'll hear a true gospel Adventist say, I've grasped the gospel, and they never mention Ellen White. They never mention 1844. They let go of all these things. So that, yes, there is a gospel Adventist out there that understands the gospel. But what I've learned, what I've discovered in those 500 interviews, and it's sad to report this, is that even those who think they have the gospel, if there's any hint of the everlasting gospel, the three angels' message, 1844, if there's a hint of that in their justification of the gospel, if in their explanation of the gospel, they actually don't understand the gospel. And I'm sad to say that this gem of Adventism, this Adventist gospel that I thought was there, actually is way off the mark itself. And so you then have these two churches in one. One's more traditional, one tries to be Bible focused, and they're both off the mark. And yeah, that's not to say there aren't people in there that understand the gospel, but if you're someone that just looks back, looks at the Bible, looks at the gospel, compares it to the Adventist teaching, any kind, gospel, traditional, it is quintessentially wrong and inaccurate. Yeah. Rochelle has just reminded us that if you do want to leave the church and get some hints, it was season 11, episode 28. It's a really interesting episode, and Rochelle outlines all the steps. And people share their stories. So yeah, if you're interested in that one, season 11, episode 28. What are your thoughts, just to close that little part of the conversation off, when you meet Adventists that claim to really know the gospel and you drill down on that? What are some things, what are some red flags that soon arise in those conversations for you?
So I've met very few that I think really understand what the Christian gospel is and who the Christian Christ is. Some that do want to stay in the church, they think they can reform the church. And I say, well, there's a problem there. That's really never happened throughout history. No church like the Seventh-day Adventist Church has gone from its very founding, which was very staunchly anti-Trinitarian, anti so many other biblical doctrines that are essential, and then at some point flipped and became a bona fide Christian church. This structure is just not going to let that happen. There's too many men in too many power positions, president, general conference, union conference presidents, who love their jobs, and their retirements and their salaries and their benefits are just not going to let this happen. So if you think you can push it from the bottom up and change these men,
No, exactly.
You're just not going to.
It's not going to change.
No, it's not going to change. You need to leave. That's really the point.
Yeah. And Stephen, when I've said that, has said to me, oh, so you're now saying people should leave? No, I'm saying people should look at the data and decide for themselves, but some people will stay because of being a cultural member, because they like the haystacks and they like hanging out on Sabbath, and they don't want to know about this other stuff. Let's just focus on Jesus. And okay. So I'm not saying leave, but I'm saying you really need to look seriously at your claim of being a Christian if you are in any way infusing any of the Adventist pillars and Ellen G. White into that equation.
Yeah. See, what I tell Adventists who have that, I said, if what you're telling me, and if I think I'm understanding you and your views are true, you are now denying your baptismal vows. You are now denying the very first thing you need to do before you take your baptismal vows, according to the church manual, which is affirm the 28 beliefs. So now you are disaffirming, belief 18 of Ellen White, belief 24, the investigative judgment, belief 11, which is the mission of the raiment and the three angels' messages. So now you're denying beliefs, and also you're denying your baptismal vow number 8, which is really a baptismal vow to Ellen White. I said, so now you're really breaking and denying those vows, which would tell me that you shouldn't even be a member of that church at that point.
Yes. Yeah. The very good point. The people go, well, there's great controversy, and I can take or leave that. And the 28 fundamentals, well, they've been so watered down that anybody could find something to agree with in those. But you look at the baptismal vows, and if you're a gospel Adventist, you are breaking those vows. And people get very upset if you say that, because, oh, no, I'm not. And they go to great lengths and use a great amount of cognitive dissonance to justify their belief in those.
Right.
A couple of quick comments. Ray Doherty has said a close relative asked to have their membership removed a year or more ago, followed up last week, and it still hadn't been done despite the request. And BDC, hey BDC, good to see you here today. I requested to have my name removed just this week. We'll let you know how long it takes.
If ever,
Yeah, exactly. And David writes, what in the world? I think Stephen mentioned that he is a multi-generational Adventist. And David says, what in the world is the belief in multi-generation membership equate to salvation? And to be fair to Stephen, I've often said to Stephen, you don't sound like an Adventist to me, when he outlines his belief in the gospel. And he's suggesting that he has an, assurance in Christ alone. But, and Rochelle adds, and this was very true in my own personal experience, it was that Adventist pastors only cared about contacting members when they wanted them to do something. And Nancy says that hers has checked and it has gone, and that's been my experience too, Nancy. I think when you're involved with a bigger church, and mine allegedly has, I think, 900 members that I left, and I said to them, I want my name taken off. I've thought a lot about it. Don't engage with me to try and change my mind. I'm not going to have to explain to you why. Let me know after your next board meeting to confirm the name is off. And my exit message to the local church that I was a member was literally 2 paragraphs long. And yeah, so they do. There's times definitely when they do, but I think it's probably worth chasing up.
When you do, and I'd be interested in hearing from somebody, how do you know your name's been taken off?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, where is it? Is there a little list they've got there? Peter Dixon, 1968, and lines through it?
I mean, unless you actually go physically to the building, talk to the secretary, show me your membership roll, and it's my name on there.
Yeah.
Other than that, I really don't know how you would know for sure.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Some really interesting experiences being shared in the chat there. If you see anything you'd like to comment on, go for it. Yeah, so back to these stats and the research you have done. Do you note that there are churches? What's the one that the guy that used to be one of the leaders of the One Project has started a church? There's a sister church of that over here in Australia. Can't remember what it's called. Someone will let us know. But when you see pictures of their weekly church, it's quite full. But my theory is that you go and look at all the churches that satellite this, new, hip, cool Adventist church that has great music and vibrant speakers, that just produce word salads that say nothing deep, just make you feel good. My theory is that, 10 from this church, 17 from that church, 8 from that church. You go and check the stats on the other churches surrounding. They're going to be even lower. They're not appealing to new people coming in. They're stealing from their own flocks in the area.
It's cannibalization.
Yeah.
Of the churches is what we would call
it.
And as I'm looking at the numbers too, and matter of fact, I wrote David Trim's office and asked him this, because I've been involved in this kind of same statistical analysis with the Jehovah's Witnesses. It's my opinion that the Seventh-day Adventists are maybe a couple decades behind the trends that I've seen happen in the Jehovah's Witness religion, which is absolutely falling apart at this point.
Really?
Yeah. So we got to the point decades ago when we're looking at Jehovah's Witness numbers, just like I'm looking at these Adventist numbers, and I'm looking, when I did my Defeating Adventism 139, I'm looking at the growth rates, and Adventists are all applauding themselves. Yay, we're growing, 1% here or 2% there. And I'm thinking, what's the birth rate?
Right.
What is the birth rate? What's the birth rate in North America, in Africa, in Europe, etc.? The average birth rate. And then, what's the average age of the people in your church and them having babies? I'm like, most of this my point is, most of this Adventist growth we see is just Adventists having children.
Right.
And getting them baptized in the church.
Yeah, that's interesting.
That's a lot of it. I actually wrote David Trim and I asked him that. I said, how do you factor into your growth rate the fact that your Seventh-day Adventist existing members are just simply having children? And that growth is not, as is often advertised as, well, look at these new numbers, like we're pulling strangers off the street. I said, when in reality, it's just Joe and Susie Adventist had a kid 8 years ago that just got baptized when he or she turned 9. Yeah. And I said, they're not new members off the street. And what the statistical office says is, we don't factor that into our numbers at all. So they don't even look at it. So there is a birth rate factor, and we can kind of look at that in each division, because, the birth rate in North America is going to be wildly different than the birth rate in Africa. We can factor those in and, give those numbers inflated. And actually, I think what we're going to find is the Adventist church really isn't growing all that much.
Yeah. Yes.
But the birth rate's a big deal, and they don't factor it in, but I do.
Yeah.
I think about it.
Yes. I think that's a very good point. I know in the stats over here, the Adventist schools bring in lots of new members too. And what I'm noticing with my daughter, she's 12, just about to turn 13 next month. It's quite a liberal Adventist school that she attends. That there is a lot of peer pressure from the young Adventists that are 11, 12, 13.
Right.
There's a lot of the young, hip, cool counselors and pastors and chaplains at the school that are encouraging baptism, and they
Right.
organize camps, and the kids go, and there's water skiing and fun stuff going on, and hikes and crafts, and they have a brilliant time. But there's altar calls, and there's a big push. I'm sensing as she talks to me about this, a big push from the chaplains, the pastors, the counselors, and the other young Adventists who are now preparing for baptism. And the numbers, and I used to teach up at this school. I used to be an Adventist school teacher. There's a lot of proselytizing going on, and there's a lot of encouraging young kids to get baptized.
Right.
So I think that the numbers come through that kind of sales funnel, through birth. And I agree, James, 100%. I think you're right. I don't think the Adventist Church is growing very fast at all. And
I'm going to mute this.
And the other thing is that they have in PNG just recently, massive rally, organized, planned 12 months ahead, where each pastor in, I think, 22 locations around New Guinea was given the exact same PowerPoint presentation to share, and they'd been advertised like crazy, and they had something like 500,000 baptisms, but they do that in New Guinea every 5 to 10 years, and you just know full well that within days, it's like they're not attending church anymore. And who understands the gospel and commits their hearts to Adventist Jesus after one PowerPoint presentation? It's ridiculous.
And I'll even go so far as to say baptism in Adventism. I'm just going to say a lot of the times when you compare it to Christianity, is absolutely it's not Christian. I released a video, I don't know, maybe 10, 15 days ago. There is on ANN News, the Adventist News Network. There's a young lady interviewing all these general conference members, and I've been listening to the videos. I got like 5 or 6 more to listen to because I'm interested in listening to these, this upper echelon leadership give their now the videos aren't for this, but often they will give their testimonies on how they converted to Adventism. Again, a recent video of mine, this gentleman gave his testimony, and he was baptized about the age of your daughter, 8, 9, 10. And then as he's talking in this video, he alludes to the fact that it's about 10 years later, in his words, he came to know Christ. And I thought, so you were a baptized unbeliever in Adventism, right? Because here you are telling about your baptismal when you're, a very young man, and then now you're in your early 20s, and you say, I came to Christ. So it's like these Adventist baptisms, I think, are just sketchy at best.
Yes, yeah. I think Rochelle actually just said something interesting about it's gone somewhere. Jesse Johnson writes, many people get baptized into the SDA church for financial benefits, such as tuition, concessions, and other perks out here in Southeast Asia. When I was a school teacher, the parents, were, had 7 kids, and they wanted to really do right by the kids and get them a good education. And, they told me that they weren't Adventists, and they got baptized as Adventists because they got the 30% discount. And they were very open about it, but there's many, I'm sure, that aren't as open, but that's what happens, and
in Mormonism, the same thing happens.
Yeah.
They'll baptize, they're really famous for baptizing Samoans. and
Right.
then bringing them to BYU to play football because these Samoan guys are big.
Yes.
And so they get baptized in Samoa because they get a free education, largely in the Adventist system, and bring them over to play football.
Yeah.
And so how Mormon are they? You know, right. So it's the same thing, right? What you
Same
just said is
thing.
the same thing
Yeah.
in Adventist. Yeah,
Same thing.
exactly.
Was the impetus for going down this rabbit hole, and again, those who might be just joining us, you can go and see Jim's channel and Defeating Adventism and look at 139 and 139A, I think is correct, and do a deeper dive. But was the impetus for that the Ty Gibson show where he does that short program where he shares this idea of there only being 6 million, or was it more, or did this interest you have in this topic begin earlier when you noticed the David Trim reports and that kind of thing?
Yeah, my interest, I mean, actually I had done a few 2 or 3 shorter videos on Adventist statistical numbers where it was being reported that Adventists love to report ascensions, confessions of faith. And then like that's a really, very, very positive thing, but they never mirror it with the losses that they have. So when you get an ascension to your faith, it only matters if you can keep it.
Yeah.
And what's been going on throughout the years is, they get lots of individuals saying they're going to stay and admit to the Adventist faith, but in a lot of cases, and it's been a growing number, as they are coming in the front door professing faith, they are running out the back door denying their faith now. And that percentage of these members that stay is getting smaller and smaller. Ascension, it's something like, if I remember correctly from my video that I did, they're losing about 76%.
Yes. Yeah.
Of their members. So for every 100 that come in the front door, 76 are running out the back door saying, thank you, goodbye.
Yeah.
So it's a very high number. The church knows this.
Yeah.
They once in a while will put this in the Advent Review magazine and other magazines. They say, we got to do something to stem the tide of these losses. And most of the losses, by the way, aren't coming from people that, Peter, are our age.
Yes.
They're the younger ones.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Most of them are. People our age, they're staying. They're sitting in the pews. They're staying. They're very comfortable, like you said, cultural Adventists.
Yeah.
They like everything.
They got kids and grandkids. And,
but the youngins, I'm just going to say 20-something, 30-somethings, those are the ones leaving in droves. Because those are the ones that are actually here on YouTube also.
Yes.
And looking at things.
I actually remember asking you about this and chatting about it with you. The church, when you listen to David Trim's reports, and I'm just trying to remember, I'm not getting exact numbers here. You can correct me if you know them, but they generally like to say that they have like an apostasy rate or people leaving at about 40%. Stats indicate, if you look at other areas, and you've done a deep dive into looking at, well, what are some other metrics we can look at besides someone just leaving? There are the apostates. Rose Power just writes somewhere there in the comments that the church needs to address the people it pushes out as well and kicks out. No, there's no kind of mental health care in those situations. They just off you go. But back to my point, what were some of the metrics that led you to believe? Because I remember saying to you once ago, it's probably up around 60%, and I've heard you say 70% and higher.
70,
This is alarming for a movement to be claiming such an incredible growth, but knowing that even their assessment of 40%, which is terrible, is probably closer to 70+%.
It is. And I know they know it because they print it every once in a while. Because they'll just say it. We've got to do something to stop this. And they identify by demographic who's leaving and by age. And that's how, based what I just said, that it's the younger, because that's just what I've read in Adventist magazine. So they know it. They're trying to get their hands around it to stop it. They really can't. They're not being successful. They know that too. They admit that. And they said, we just got to keep working at this and stopping it.
Yeah.
And so they keep trying things.
Yes.
Here in North America, what we got right now? It's called Pentecost 2025, new initiative, North American division, right? We're gonna bring in more Adventists because actually the North American division is bleeding members. Okay.
Yes, big time.
And so they know there's a problem. So what do? Well, they launch off this Pentecost 2025. What's so funny is a couple 3 years ago, I think in the middle of the COVID, the Adventist Church was signing up digital missionaries.
Right.
So I signed up to be one, and they let me in.
Yeah.
So I'm a Seventh-day Adventist digital missionary. Congratulations, here I am. And so I get all these emails, right? All these events. That's how I know about all this. So I get all these, and I see all these initiatives that they're working on, and they're not working. I mean, just from a business perspective, I'm looking at the literature, I'm reading their literature, I'm looking at their strategy, I'm looking at their execution, and then I'm looking at whatever results that they are, that I can discern that they're reporting, and I can just tell you they're not working. We got a whole lot of people working on projects in Seventh-day Adventism
that
are not yielding the results.
Exactly.
That's just a fact.
Yeah. Very interesting.
But see, here's something else, Peter, we can even talk about and throw this in the mix. So they're losing members. And what I did in my video was to lose a member in Africa and to lose a member in North America is not equal. Here's why. Because I looked at tithing and I calculated my own per capita tithe by I think it's 13 divisions or 11 divisions, whatever it is. By the divisions.
13.
The North American division is the highest per capita tithe-paying member of all the divisions. The West Central Africa, lowest. North American division, the average member, and I'm looking at my numbers, tithes almost $1,500 a year. That's an average person per member in North America. $1,500 a year, right? Of course, we know that not all members are tithe-paying members because they're children, but nonetheless, that's the number. It's the highest number. The lowest tithe-paying number is South Asia. That's $10 a person.
Wow.
Or West Central Africa, it's $35 a person a year. So when you lose a North American member, or let's just say you lose a couple of families, you're losing $1,500 each one. And if you lose, so what's it? In other words, one statistical alignment I made is if you lose one member in North America, you have to have about 95 new African converts just to equal out the finances.
Yes.
So what I saw when I was looking at all these finances, because I was relating membership losses by division according to per capita tithe numbers, and the second highest one was inter-European, was number 2 for tithe. And the worst retention rates are your highest tithe-paying divisions. Yeah. Your most losses are your highest tithe-paying divisions. All your growth in Adventism is happening where very little tithe is being collected. So when you just look at numbers, gains, and losses, and you look at the whole church and by division, there's a financial crisis brewing on the horizon.
Yeah, big time.
Because Europe is declining, North America is declining. That's your cash cows.
Yeah.
That's giving you most of your dollars. You're growing in Africa, you're growing in South America, but those tithe dollars are much less.
Yeah.
So I see a financial problem on the horizon for the church. And you know what? And I know they see it too.
Yes, big time. And boy, there's some good points you're raising there, Jim. I remember Danny Sheldon coming here, and this is another point that might add to the mix. Many years ago, maybe, I don't know, 10, 15 years ago, I can't remember exactly. And, 3ABN, Danny Shelton, and I had a music shop back then, and one of his, I can't remember if it was him. I don't think it was him. One of his assistants came in and said, "Can we borrow a guitar? Danny wants to borrow one, if that's okay, to play at the church on the weekend." So I gave them one of my guitars, and this is the interesting thing. When he did his rally, independent ministries, not a mainstream evangelist, the church that holds nearly 1,000 people had over 900 people in it, just down the road here. In that one afternoon meeting, he raised $3.5 million from those 900 people, and maybe others watching online. This was pre-online stuff, really.
Yeah.
And they then built 10 minutes from me here, the Australian 3ABN studio. And it's incredible. Fully staffed studios, cameras, radio suite, editing suite. It's amazing. And the people are lovely. This is not about the people. I'm not criticizing Danny, but I want to make a point that, yes, the tithe-paying members of the church are leaving, and the church is worried about losing their larger portions of that money that come from them. But the Adventists who want to give money to the church are giving it to the independent ministries. Your Doug Batchelors, your Ty Gibson. Ty Gibson is Light Bearers. And Arise, David Asherick. They are independent ministries. And people are giving these guys money. There's a local ministry here called, he used to be the guy that ran, it's a famous Adventist ministry, but there was some financial discussions that went pear-shaped. And he's just down the road here, and they turn over hundreds of thousands of dollars a year in donations to them. These people that are paying 3ABN and paying these independent ministries money are therefore paying the Adventist Church even less. So they're losing money that way, not just from memberships leaving. And they appear to be doing nothing about it. Gospel Adventist writes, the church needs to change its policy on baptism and membership. And the reality is they never will, because to change it, you have to water down Ellen White's authority. And Rochelle writes here an interesting point. Baptism in the SDA church is initiation into church membership. It has nothing to do with Jesus whatsoever.
Yeah, true.
The baptismal certificate, and see how many items refer to Jesus versus Ellen. And the sad reality about that is that people aren't connecting with the depth and meaning of the gospel message. And so if you're just a member to something, you're baptized when you're 11 to 13, you've had no depth connection with it, and it's much easier for you to leave when you get a bit older.
Yeah. See, another, I think I heard somebody say this, and I thought it was quite funny. Speaking of the, what is it again, 13 divisions, 11 divisions?
I think it's 12, and then the 12. GC itself is counted as the 13th.
Yeah.
Someone can tell me.
So we're going to say the 11 or 12 divisions. They're like the 11 or 12 cardinals.
Yes.
And we got the Pope at the top here, right? We got the President, the Pope, and the cardinals. Because another part of my statistical analysis was I'm looking at the memberships of those divisions. And I'm looking at the South African Indian Ocean Division, 4 million members, right? I'm looking at the Inter-American, 3.7 million members. Right? So some of these got big numbers. North America's 1.2 million. But then I look at this one here, Euro-Asia, 58,000. I thought, you got a president, you got an office, you got a staff, you got all this overhead for a division of 58,000. Any of these other divisions I just mentioned, they have, just groups of churches underneath that make up that 58,000. And so I also see in the Adventist church this unwillingness to restructure.
Yes.
Because again, when I did my numbers, I'm looking at this from a business perspective. And I'm looking at the Adventist numbers from a business perspective, and I say, you have two divisions that do not need to exist. You ought to collapse.
Yeah.
And that's the Trans-European and the Euro-Asia divisions. They're small. They're not growing. They're really tiny. But again, it takes us back to, if they did that, that's going to signal weakness to the members of, we're downsizing, we're collapsing, we're reorganizing. They need to. I mean, they would save lots of dollars.
Yeah.
And all that office and overhead staff for those two divisions could just go away.
Yeah.
But they won't do it.
No.
At least I don't think they'll do it.
No, they won't. They won't at all.
No, that's what I think. I may even have told them in the video. I mean, here I'm giving you business advice in my video that people used to pay me big bucks to do. So
as a business,
take it for what it's worth.
Yeah. They like to be perceived to be doing change. Pastor Jeff Parker over here, again, this is not attacking people. Great guy. He used to be my neighbor. And I really like him. I think he's a really good person. And he's the union youth leader, I think, over here. And I was chatting on one of the Facebook groups about how I'd heard, that up to 60% of Adventist youth are leaving the church. Yes. And he wrote to me and said, well, where are you getting that stat from? It's not that number. And I thought, well, where did I get that stat? So I did some research because I remember I'd seen it in the Australian, they call it The Record. It's like a magazine that goes out every week to every church in Australia. And it's a really good way to network and keep communication going between Adventists and Adventist churches. And so I Googled it, and yep, here comes this article, and it says 60% of 60% of young people are leaving the church. Now, if you see an Adventist magazine that uses the word the church, they're referring to the Adventist church.
That's right.
So this article, 60% of young people are leaving the church. In the middle, nestled, is a quote from Jeff Parker himself confirming that. So I wrote back to him and screenshot it. And I said, well, it turns out I got that quote, the number, from you. And he said, oh, no, that was an article about the Christian church in Australia, not just Adventists. And I said, come on, if you say the church in an Adventist magazine, you're meaning the church.
Right.
And he said, oh, well, that wasn't the article. And it's and I said, well, what is the stat? And he said, oh, we don't know, but it might be 40%. I said, could it be 40+%? And he said, yeah.
Right.
But then he said an interesting thing, that he was working on 6 points to stop this, this mass exit and exodus of young people. And I said, well, what are those 6 points? And he wouldn't say. And I said, come on the show and share them. But he didn't feel comfortable because people coming on my show, sometimes they get in trouble for doing so, if they're an employed member. And so I thought, okay, well, how serious are you guys about bringing change? Because this show has a lot of former Adventists and fringe Adventists who care about young people and could probably offer back some advice, in what you guys need to do to stop the mass exit is this. But they don't want to listen. They say they're going to bring about change. They love looking like they're bringing about change, like the program you just mentioned. And every year they wheel out another big thing,
That's right.
This is going to, total member involvement and all this kind of stuff.
Right.
And I just, the realization and the moment I left the Adventist church really was bolstered by this notion, hang on a second, this is not going to change. They tell us it's going to change. They offer false hope. They love making it look like they are, but it is not going to change. And when you realize that, you can then deal with it as you want. You can go, okay, I'll be a cultural Adventist. Cool, I'll enjoy my haystacks. But you would struggle if you have a desire to bring about positive change, staying. Because once you realize it is categorical. That's not just me, suggesting this from anecdotal experience. It's looking at the numbers. at every point in Adventist history, right from the beginning, dating right back to Canwright, anytime the church was offered feedback and advice, like you could offer free business advice to them, every time it is offered, it is rejected.
Yeah. So my number is 76%. I'm looking at my sheet and reminding myself. When you calculate the numbers, and I did from the statistical data, it was 71%. So you can ask, how did you get from 71 to 76%? Here's what I learned looking at the reports. And this blew me away. I had to go back and look at this over and over and over. So they have a detailed breakdown. I mean, these annual reports are in excess of 120 pages. And they'll go by division and then by the unions in the division. And they list all these categories and gains and losses. And they have a whole section on members subtracted. So in the very front of the report, they have a report of membership losses by division. They give a number. So I'm, in this case, for this example, I think I'm looking at the East Central Africa division. All right. So the East Central Africa division in 2022 lost 106,000 members. And those numbers come out of like 5 categories. But then I added it up in their detailed report. I added up all the 5 numbers for members subtracted, and I didn't get the 106,000. I'm like, wait a second. These are all numbers subtracted, but it doesn't equal the table that you had in the front. So you know what I found out? When you read the table in the very front of the report for losses, it does not include deaths.
No way.
Deaths. A death is not a loss. And when I read that, I went,
whoa,
oh my gosh. Okay. I hearkened
no
back to
way.
the 1970s Hotel California. Like, you can check in, but you can't check out. And yes. Yeah. And I show that in my video. I show you the numbers. Here's the 106,000. So how can I look at all these numbers subtracted for this division and get to 106,000? Oh, I add the members that are dropped. I add the members that are missed, and they have something else called adjustments. And they leave out deaths.
That is
so
incredible.
Deaths are not a loss. And I went, wow. So when you add deaths into it, which is what you're going to have more of with an aging population, which is what Adventism largely is. I'll say largely in the West, not so much in Africa or in South America, you're going to have a higher loss rate. And it's like, so I added in the death rate, which they never added in. And that's how I go from 71 to 76%. So that was astounding. When you're dead, you just don't count. I mean, it's a loss. that was bizarre.
That's incredible, because
Isn't
that means those numbers would accrue over time.
Yes.
This is worse than you could imagine, because
It is, yes.
it's not just a momentary snapshot of what it is now. It means even this number that might be 6 million instead of 22 million,
right,
is probably less than that,
yeah,
because they're not accounting for this accrued number of deaths.
No.
And on top of that, they don't count for people who have left the church but haven't taken their name off the rolls.
That too. And they know in each church.
And yes, and Ty Gibson, in revealing these numbers, surprised me that he did, but good on him. I think, imagine if you then can't factor in what you've discovered, you literally might be closer to 85%.
Yeah.
And you might literally only have about 2 million people attending church every week. The numbers might be really low.
They might be.
But
Here's something else I discovered. I'm going to call this a secret way to leave Adventism. I saw a category in losses, and they call it letters granted. So in Adventism, you can be in a church, you can write up a letter and say, I'm going to move from point A to point B. Please accept me in point B. Here's my letter to my current pastor. I'm leaving your church and I'm going to go to point B. So we have letters granted and letters accepted. So I ran data on those. And I found out that letters granted were far greater than letters accepted. We had about 4,500 people who never got accepted, who just issued a letter, I'm leaving, and
Sorry, you froze there again. Let it catch up to the streaming.
letters.
So just say that
Okay,
again. So
there
you've
we go.
got 4,500 letters where people have said they want to
Yeah,
leave.
so
and what next did you say?
Right. No, the delta between the two was about 4,500. So they granted way far more letters to leave than they have letters of people moving to places.
I see.
So
I
we
see
have
what you mean. Right.
4,500
Wow.
more being granted to leave, and they don't show up anywhere.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, there's another escape of people just sending in a letter,
Yeah.
and then they just never go where they say they're going, and they're gone.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And that's not counted in the stats.
That's right. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. You have delved into this more than anyone else on the planet. That's making this conversation absolutely fascinating. We've got Advent Defense League has just written a comment. Do you mind if I bring up? He's I think suggesting. And hi, Edwin. Good to have you commenting. Edwin and I agree on something. We did a show which I kind of I didn't mean to at all, but I kind of didn't keep to what I thought we were going to talk about. Adventist Defense League are very much about defending the positions and the doctrines of the Adventist Church. And one thing that I'm interested in is, before I find out the defense, I want to know exactly what the belief is. And so I kept coming back to, well, just briefly tell me what you believe, what you do believe, what you believe. And I was trying to bring it right up to the time of probation. And, obviously that takes a long time. So we kind of run out of time before we got to me saying, now I want to know if you can defend those beliefs. And I'm more than happy to let Edwin do that on my show, because he and I agree on this one thing, that a lot of the new theology guys, the Des Ford kind of followers, people that I personally have resonated with more in my life and when I was an Adventist, but they are unraveling the traditional Adventist message. And I think that Edwin and I would agree, and he might be able to say in the comments, that these guys who claim to be gospel Adventists, while minimizing the authority of Ellen White, are being harmful to the Adventist Church. The core message of the Adventist Church needs to keep Ellen White's authority very high. And so people like Edwin, in a weird way, I think, are doing, what anyone who is trying to protect their church would do. They're defending it. Now, he says here, please tell Jim that I would like to debate him. What would you say to that?
So, Edwin, you've been answered many times on this. No, I'm not going to debate you online. I have 200 videos. Come visit me and pick one. But you've already said you're too lazy to type. You've already said that over and over and over. So, as Peter and I talked earlier, no, I'm not going to debate Adventists. I deal with Adventists every day, and I see the mental deficiencies and frustrations with Adventism, and I'm just not going to sit down with you and go through that. If you want to talk to me, you can do so through my videos, but you don't do that. So you obviously don't want to talk. So no, I'm not going to debate you, but you can meet me on any of my videos.
And it's interesting, isn't it, that many of the former Adventists and their channels, we all have very different approaches. So some would love a debate with Edwin and the team. Some would love it.
Sure.
Those who don't want to aren't in any way demonstrating any weakness. They're simply saying, that's not what my show is about. So, for example, I wouldn't debate Edwin on and challenge him on belief claims that the Adventist Church have and try and prove him wrong, because that's not my shtick.
Right.
My thing is allowing a broad spectrum of people to come on the show I ask them, what do you believe? Why do you believe it? And can you defend it? And I just ask some challenging questions on can they defend it? But I don't try and rebut their claim with a
Sure.
better claim. I'm not
Right.
that
No.
person.
Yeah,
And there are many other former Adventists and people like yourself who are putting shows out there about Adventism that it's just not their thing to debate. And I think you fall into that category. You're presenting your thoughts, and people, I often just write in your comments and say, what about that? Or that was interesting. So someone who wants to challenge you can write in the comments and say, look, I don't agree with that. Try this. And Edwin would be welcome to go, hey, I've done a
Absolutely.
show on this already. Go and check it out.
Yeah.
And I just think what you're saying is you won't go on a show and debate with him. You've just been clear about that. But you're happy for him to engage with your content, as are people welcome to engage with his content.
I engage Seventh-day Adventists
all the
every
time.
day,
Yeah.
many
And
hours a day. So Adventists are willing to come on and engage me. He
And
just
Ed-
doesn't want to, but others are.
yeah. And Edwin, are you in Australia yet? I was hoping we could catch up. Are you here yet? I'm not sure if you've arrived or not. It'd be good to catch up, and maybe we could do a show down by the Sydney Harbour Bridge with the Opera House in the background on the water, and have a couple of
Well,
mics.
that'd be beautiful.
That's very, very beautiful location. He just writes back, just giving him the right a reply there. But he will debate in text, not on a live stream. Ask him why is that. I guess that just might be your more preferred style.
Well, that's what I said. I've engaged enough Adventists to know that if I sat down and I watched Miles Christian debate some Adventists, and I thought, oh my word, this is so frustrating.
Yeah.
You can't get a coherent, logical answer from an Adventist. And I can tell you from someone who deals with Adventists every day,
Yeah,
that's what I get every day. So yeah, that's why. Because I can just, when you get silly and crazy illogical in a text, I'll just tell you, we're done, quit, and move on. But in a debate format, that's a little different.
Yes, yeah. And also sometimes your material can be used as a screenshot with a caption above it that doesn't fully capture,
Right.
I think they used one of my interviews and they said something along the lines of former Adventist is stumped by a certain question or something like that, because I paused at one point in a question they asked, which is a little bit disingenuous to do that, because I might have been pausing because I had to press a button or something like that. And I wasn't stumped because I wasn't rebutting any claims.
Right.
One of the things we chatted about this off air that I love doing is allowing an Adventist to present their claims and defend their claims, because often just in doing that, people get to see Adventism and they can decide for themselves without, I have no counterclaim.
I love it when you do that. I think it's great. You provide this forum. You can ask a very open-ended questions and just let them explain. And I think that's a great service.
Yeah. Thank you. And Edwin says that wasn't us. Thanks for confirming that. It didn't upset me, by the way, Edwin, even if it had been you guys. And that it must have been someone that took a grab from our interview and used it. And that's okay. I mean, I think if people try and get me into some kind of debate, I'm not. My position is I'm not making really claims. Who knows? I personally, all I can cope with is the teachings of Jesus from the four Gospels. That's my anchor. That's where I go to just to find solace. If someone wants to chat to me about Daniel Revelation 2,300 days, boom, I've got no answer. But I respect too that Edwin has his style and his channel, and I think Edwin will realize that people just have different styles. I'd rather text people than have a chat on a phone. I'd rather have a conversation that's not scripted. I'd rather hear what people have to say and ask them some questions if they can defend. We're all different, is what I'm saying. And I think that the Defence League is offering a good service for those who don't like the Gospel Adventists, for those who, you know, he's creating dialogue and discussion, and good on him. See, someone just said here, and I think this is ridiculous. It truly sounds like James is a little afraid to debate Edwin.
Right. But they didn't hear what I said. You can come. I'm online at Edwin's
all the time.
We've already had this conversation. Edwin, he's already heard it.
Well, they're
I'm here 14 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Yeah.
I'm not hard to find.
Yeah.
So you want to talk with me? I got over 200 videos. I'm there 14 hours a day. Pick one.
Yeah.
And I respond. I respond to every notification I receive in YouTube.
Yeah. Yeah, you're great.
Everybody that responds.
And Sean, I know you're just trolling there, mate. Sean Stevenson, SDA Messenger. Is that Facebook group, SDA Messenger? Sean, come on my show and let's have a chat. I'm not smart enough to debate you and rebut your claims, but I'm good at asking some hard questions, and I'd love to find out if you can answer them. I've got about Rodrigo and I've put together 2 shows, 7 questions that Adventist pastors won't answer publicly, and the second one is 7 more questions. And then I did another one on 7. So we got about 21 questions. I'd love to ask you, Sean Stevenson, be bold. Or Sean, are you a little bit afraid to come on my show? I challenge you, Sean Stevenson, to come on my show this time next week. This time, 6:30 p.m. Pacific time, Wednesday evening. This is the challenge. Write to me in the comments. Do you accept? And we'll exchange emails. Come on the show next week. Or are you a little bit too scared there, Sean? Are you too scared to come on my show? Let's see. I look forward to your comment. But yeah, I think we've established that. Yeah, boy, you have raised some fascinating aspects that I don't think I've even picked up from your really incredible program, the number 139 and 139A. I think you might have to put another couple of shows out to even bring some of this more information, that those extra metrics that you have found that keep pushing the leaving rate even higher. This is potentially around 80%. Even if
I agree.
That's just phenomenal.
I can tell you from doing this research, I have over 20,000 PDF Adventist magazines that I've downloaded off their archive site, going back to the 1850s to today, and from variety, all official publications, Signs of the Times, Youth Instructor, Advent Review, and lots of other magazines. So I do searches in all of those magazines. So as I was doing searches and preparing this statistical video, the 139, I kept coming across Adventism very proud of their growing numbers. So I would see a magazine, and I'll just pick a year, 1881. Oh, we're growing from this number to this number. Isn't this is a sign God's hand is on our church? You can see the same thing in the 1920s, 1960s, on and on and on. But what I found lately is when you report these kinds of things, and then I say, oh no, these declining numbers, that's proof that God's hand is on our church. I'm like, what? Because that's not what you were saying 40 years ago. That's the shaking,
Yes.
Right?
Yes. They've got a good excuse either way.
Yes. And that's just something that's been really funny in all this, because their magazines are very proud of their growth and their new numbers, and all throughout the many decades. And then all of a sudden, now that they're declining, all of a sudden, now that's proof that God's hand is on the church, because it's the shaking that Ellen told us was coming.
So on the one hand, if the numbers look good, that's a sign.
Yeah.
If people start leaving, that's a sign of the shaking.
That's right.
Now, Sean has just written back, I'm actually a little afraid. No, you're not, Sean. Come on. I'm not a good debater, but thank you for the invite. Mate, I'm not a good debater at all. I'm a street epistemologist. I just want to sit here and say, well, what do you believe, Sean? And you just tell me, and I'll say, what about that? And have you thought about that? And so you do really believe this? And what do you believe about Jesus and not being there as an intercessor? I'll just ask you some probing questions to not to unravel your belief, but to help you further define it and be clearer at what you do believe. It's not a debate. I'm not going to push back and say you're wrong. I'm just going to say, oh, so you also believe this. And come on, yeah, if you're going to have a little attack on James with some crazy ad hominem little ridiculous notion that he's scared, that's just stupid. So come on the show, Sean. This is my second invitation. Next week, 6:30 p.m. Thursday Pacific time. Yeah. So why do you think Ty Gibson did that program? Which
Boy,
is opposite to what most people would say.
Yeah. I would think that church leadership would be upset with him for saying that. Because, to reduce that number, like we said earlier, like I believe if the Adventism was ever to come real with their numbers, it would deflate their memberships, motivation, etc. It would have a deflating factor involved with that.
Yeah.
So I don't know why he said that, but he did. In this video, he was talking about all kinds of things. So the video wasn't really about statistics and church membership, but that came up for a period of minutes. And that's when somebody who subscribes to my channel said, you got to go watch this and listen to what he said here. And I go, okay. And I did. And I went, wow. I said, I probably agree with you. I think you're probably pretty close. We could say 6 million, like he said, or I could even inflate it to 10 million. But we all know it's not 22 million.
No.
And even the latest statistical report, the 2024 report, which is 2023 data, how's the church still growing? And now it's, I don't know, maybe 23, I think it's 23 million, 24 million. But again, they don't, like I said, the birth rate and all that, they're just birthing Adventists into Adventism. They're really not, they're not bringing in new membership.
Yeah.
North America is dying on the vine. And when another point we can make even about the growth and tithe, if you just look at three divisions are responsible for 78% of all the tithes collected. 3. 2 of those divisions are your top tithe givers, and that's the North American and Inter-American, and are your top. So 78% of all the tithes collected come from just 3.
Wow.
And then you can go the other way, and you can look at, there's 5 divisions, and the 5 divisions only account for 9% of the tithes collected. So they're very small. So they're large in number, but they don't produce any finances. But then you have these 3 that are actually kind of small in number that produce all the finances. But that's where the losses are happening.
That's right.
So this is a collision course.
Yeah, your experience and actual work has been in business and consultation and whatnot. If you looked at, let's say, a big American corporation in Australia, Adventism is a corporation. It's literally an LTD, PTY. It's a limited corporate structure. Literally, I don't know if it is in the States or not, but the SPD here in Australia is a company. If in your experience, Jim, as you've looked at businesses and you are about to give advice and you've just analyzed the Adventist Church, the numbers, the money, the decline, the areas that need to be rectified, the lies that are being told, what would you say to a business in a sense of, you have got to turn this around, you've got 5 years left? Can you ascertain any kind of future prediction based on the numbers you've looked at?
Yeah,
Purely as
absolutely.
a business.
Absolutely. There's going to be financial pressures. And as a matter of fact, I've already seen a couple articles on this applied. They're just not going to have the budget dollars because the tithes aren't coming in to do certain things that they want to do. Soon after I did this Defeating Adventism number 139, there was a report of I think it was a union in somewhere here in the Northwest in the United States, where they were actually saying, "Hey, we're going to have layoffs. We're going to be closing some things down because we just don't have the dollars for it." What's going to happen with the Adventist Church, because they're ignoring what the facts and data are telling them? Because they're doing that, this is what's going to happen. It's going to go along slowly. Things are going to decline slowly, and then all of a sudden, at once, it's going to fold. They're going to have to do something. Drastic action will become necessary. The longer they wait and ignore the true facts and data, and I'm probably not telling them anything they already don't know, but because they don't act on it, it's getting worse. And then all of a sudden, it's just going to collapse.
Yeah.
And we're going to see, like I said, I made recommendations in my video. You need to collapse 2 divisions, at least 2. You could probably do 3 and save all those overhead costs. And by the way, I analyzed part-time and full-time employment by division across all the divisions. And I'm like, why does the North American division have 40+% of all employees for the entire Adventist Church? You have a division who's bleeding members and losing numbers, but yet they have 40% of all the employment in your entire church. Yeah. There's probably a lot of employees, people that are listed on these employment rolls, that don't need to be there. And they could trim that 25% if they were willing to give it a hard look and save those dollars. But yeah, the North American division, and I'm looking at my data here from the 2022 data, 157,000 employees. And it's like, that's the most of any division. That's 40% of all the employees are in that one division.
Yes.
And that's the division that has the worst retention rate of all your churches.
What division
give them the
was that
employees? Yeah, North American has the worst retention.
Yeah. I've read that 1 in 2 Adventists are employed by the church in the North American division. I don't know if that's true.
It might be. I mean, I'm looking
They're
at
very top-heavy administratively. And what they're doing here in Australia at the SPD, the South Pacific Division, and I'd love if you have info on them, but what they're trying to do here is to find other revenue streams. And so they're selling properties, tearing down buildings, putting up developments, releasing large pockets of land, working with developers to bring in extra revenue that way. And they've very much changed their structure so they can benefit from that with ongoing passive income, because, so these guys are clever. They're not, a lot of these guys aren't, weren't born yesterday. It's not like the Adventist business skills of 20 years ago, which they were all pretty useless. They're getting savvy. They've made some big mistakes over the last 15 years, but they're starting to realize now that, right, we've got lots of really great land. We've got lots of properties in very good locations. And so instead of just selling them off, they're tearing down buildings, putting up properties, using large parcels of land. They have a large parcel of land just up from me here that they've been developing for the last 15 years. There's over 500 homes on it, and they are hoping to have 2,800 homes. The developer who has been working on that property on behalf of the Adventist Church is an Adventist, but I doubt he'd be in the category of a practicing Adventist. I don't want to get any libel. This is just a maybe. I don't know. Who knows? Allegedly, but they initially promised our local Chamber of Commerce, of which I am still a member, they're going to be large boutique blocks, and there's going to be sewage connected to the Hunter Valley water, and we're not going to have any commercial land there. We're not going to threaten your local Kurrambong businesses. And 15 years later, you can buy blocks up there that are 450 square meters. You can barely fit your house on with a meter of land around the perimeter.
Right.
And there's developers that are in the know have brought up properties that connect with it, and it appears to be part of the same land. And the church has hardly made any money at all in that 15 plus years. and they no longer connect the water. Well, they never did in the first
Oh,
place.
wow.
Connect the water to the Hunter Valley. They've got their own transpiration kind of sewage center set up that anyone who buys a property there has to pay money into. And I'm not making any allegations, but there's some passive income coming in there. And on top of that, they're just about, come Christmas, release one of the biggest commercial sites with massive shopping center, shopping malls, total. The Adventists tell you one thing, but if it's about the money, they don't care. You're done for, and they're going to impose all this stuff. Allegedly, I might be wrong. Who knows? What do I know? But there's a lot of unhappy people saying this kind of stuff out there.
But what you just described is something very similar to what I said earlier about the Jehovah's Witnesses.
Right.
When they were declining, they too realized. I mean, they had New York City city property worth millions and millions and millions of dollars.
Wow.
They sold it all. I mean, that's where their religion was founded, started, worked out of for over 100 years.
Yeah.
But they started running into financial issues. So one thing they did is they sold all their New York City property and they moved to a small place called Paterson, New Jersey. They downsized.
Right.
So
as a business move, from your perspective, have they had the collapse and they're just now going to hobble along for the next century as a very small, minor denomination?
I do. I think so. Let me share with you something else that I don't know, may or may not be a sign of collapse. So I wasn't aware of until recently that there was a newer church manual than the one that I have. And I have this one here I use all the time. This is the church manual from 2015, 19th edition. And so one of my members was telling me, well, hey, there's a 2022 edition. I said, I didn't know that. Thanks for telling me. So I went on where I buy all my Adventist books, online.com, and I got this book. And here's what I noticed is different. This is paperback cover. I'm like, why are you selling paperback? Because this one here is a hardcover. Nice book, right? Nice printed, good, hard paperback going to softbacks. One thing we noticed with the Jehovah's Witnesses, when their printings, all their printings did this, shifted from hardback books to cheaper softcover books.
Interesting.
So I don't know if that's what I'm seeing here, but that was my first thought when I got this. I thought, this is such a cheap book.
Well,
when comparing it to the previous one. This is a nice book, nicely bound and very tight. And I go, this is just, in printing terms, is a piece of junk. Don't know, but
have you done? Yeah, those little signs are little flags. They're little red flags.
Yeah.
When you can see them cutting costs, trying to find other revenue streams, these are signs that they're in trouble.
It is.
And interestingly, with the vacuum that is left because of weak leadership being willing to say, hey, we want a diverse church. We accept gospel Adventists. We accept the traditional Adventists. Because of that weak leadership, no one's happy. Look at the Conrad Vine stuff. Look at the whole Des Ford stuff. Gospel Adventists to this day have a weak influence. No one feels like they're home. The leadership is not in any way helping the situation. And as I said earlier, the traditional Adventists are unhappy too. And they're going, well, we're going to give all our money to 3ABN. We're going to give it to Doug Batchelor.
That's
and
right.
So, I think instead of having lower level leaders who are good with money and doing all this property stuff and finding out how to cut corners in publishing and finding out some ways that are hip and cool to keep young people in the church, they need to do a serious, very top level leadership switch in their approach, which I think needs to either be, we don't want you diverse new theology guys in here, you need to get out, or to say we do accept the traditional and the progressive Adventists. But they're saying neither. They play each other, and everyone, like, people are getting really sick of it. And this Charlie Kirk thing, even though, he's not an Adventist, or just from my observation daily with my finger on the pulse, same with you with Adventists, is it is further polarizing the Adventist church in ways that I have never seen before at drastic levels, where they need to start taking some public action at a top level leadership position very soon. And maybe Erton Kohler is the guy who's going to say, hey, you know, I want to welcome people into the church as a member. You can be progressive or whatever, but all leadership now is going to focus on increasing our love for Ellen White and her authority. You know, but Ted Wilson tried that for 15 years,
Right.
and succeeded in many ways. Look how conservative the church is now compared to what it was 20 years ago with Jan Paulson. You know, there's some free advice. We're both offering the church some
I
pretty
know.
sound advice today.
That's right. That's right.
Will they listen? No.
No.
Rochelle wrote a little earlier. Let's see if I can find it, a point about that. Asking any questions, what about this, what about that, to an Adventist is to them considered pushing back and telling them they are wrong because Adventism requires uniformity in belief without questioning. And I remember interviewing George Knight, and he's going to be, so I'm replaying some of my season 2, which I did 5 years ago. There were 86 interviews based on Glacier View and Des Ford. And because Facebook is I don't know if you've noticed with any of your material, Facebook is deleting now all previous live videos, which is really sad. So I'm slowly putting them up on YouTube to keep them there. But my interview with George Knight is coming up, I think, next week or the week after, coming up very soon. He's someone who has written post Ellen White's publishing works. Don't count her. He's the most published Adventist writer on the planet. And you would think that someone like him has experienced pushback and questions. When I interviewed him, he kept getting frustrated, and even at one point said, "You're asking the wrong questions." And I thought, wow, that's an interesting kind of nuanced ad hominem attack, suggesting that I don't know what I'm talking about. You're asking the wrong question.
Right.
Asking questions can never be wrong if you're truly trying to find out what someone believes. I just want to find out what he believed.
Right. Right.
And the last part of the interview went really well when he actually clicked to that, and he changed the whole demeanor. But it exemplified to me the very fact that Adventists are not used to being asked questions, and they view any kind of questioning of their belief as a personal attack. And the progressive Adventists are the worst. They cannot cope. Progressive Adventists cannot cope with the pushback. They really hate being challenged.
No. I deal with, like I said earlier, I deal with this every day in the comments when I get all my notifications and I start answering them. And Adventists, are in one form or fashion upset with something that I said, and you're welcome to take issue with me. Let's just stick on one point and let's just go through it. They can't.
Yeah.
They just can't stay on topic.
Yeah.
Rational, logic, focus. Let's have a good discussion about. They just can't do it.
That's right. Yeah. We were chatting off air about my recent interview with Ben Tavau, and again, great guy. He and I really hit it off, got on well. And I said to him, and the program was that, an SDA pastor was going to defend or, stand up for the investigative judgment from the Bible alone. And, the reality is that in that interview, you could see what you're just talking about, this sense of, okay. And there's a like a garden, word salad of answering that just gets distracted and diverts, and you can see the cognitive dissonance just pouring out. And I said to him bluntly, as a friend, your actual ministry, you where the rubber hits the road, you're helping homeless people, you're providing great music and content, and a really functioning church that actually it has lots of people turn up every week. I said, you'd be best to create your own separate small gospel vine church or whatever,
Right.
because people like him who have incredible talent, incredible insights into how to put the gospel into action for real world situations, get swallowed up by Adventism into this crazy land of murky, blasphemous gospel that just stops them from actually being able to function.
Right.
And it's sad to see.
Yeah.
Rick adds, the last generation theology crew doesn't want you there unless you toe the line.
True.
Mission shouldn't be called hold the line, but toe the line.
Yeah.
Have you looked much into Erton Kohler and the impact that he might have on the church? He seems a little bit more politically aggressive. I'm not saying as in a militant kind of person, but he seems to be very good at what he does in a sense of a political player. Now, Ted Wilson was as well. Ted
Sure.
stayed there for 15 years and
Right.
has defended the authority of Ellen White. And I'm not saying his leadership was a failure as far as what his goals were. I think he achieved them, but the Erton seems to be a bit next level on that. What are your thoughts on
So
his
what I would
leadership?
say again, I'm going to use some business leadership language with you, and I almost call the leadership style of Ted Wilson is really leaning towards what they call the laissez-faire leadership style. Not too hard, not very hands-on. Yes, they do push some things, but it's and this is just my perspective. I might be totally wrong, but that's kind of the impression I got from him. Now, I have talked to a couple, 3 Brazilians who were under Mr. Kohler in Brazil. And what I'm hearing is we're going to have a complete, if past history is a predictor, then we're going to have a very authoritarian leadership here style.
Yeah. Yes.
This is what I'm hearing. And I've heard things like, you will baptize, X amount of people during this time period. And he's going to give them some very hard metrics. And he's going to check those metrics, and he's going to measure them. And you're going to find out you're going to be the pastor in Antarctica if you don't hit the metrics I tell you to hit. And, you're going to like snow because that's where I'm going to send you.
Yes.
Or you're going to get promotions if you
Yes.
you meet or exceed. But again, that's just what I'm hearing.
Yeah.
And they're telling me that based on their past dealing with him. So we as humans really don't change that much in our life. So I'm not expecting him to change. I'm expecting him to be like everybody else.
Yeah.
So this is going to be a very interesting ride to see if that happens. I think we're going to have possibly an exodus of Seventh-day Adventist leadership may quietly leave. Say, I'm not going to work for this crazy man. I've worked for authoritarian leaders in the past. I know what it's like.
Yeah.
Nobody likes it. People will seek the best way to gracefully exit their position. Or what they'll do, because it's a bureaucratic model, I will go down lower on the bureaucratic model and insulate myself from this leader. And let others, that are closer and higher in this system, you deal with them.
Yeah.
I'm going down here where I can just calmly live. So I think we're going to see some interesting times, perhaps.
Yes, I think you are totally correct with that. And a lot of progressive Adventists are saying to me, "Oh, look, let's wait and see. Let's give him a chance." I'm thinking you just do some research into his already on file leadership style, his views on women's ordination, the way he handles conflict, the way he handles opposition, and I'm not even saying that he's right or wrong. I'm just saying, progressives, please stop thinking it's going to change. It's not. So either find your nice little quiet little Sabbath school room you can have it behind closed doors and enjoy your fellowship lunch, but don't expect the church to change. It is not going to change. It never has. There has never been a growth time for progressive Adventists. There's never. There never has been in the whole of Adventist history. It is not a pendulum swing. It is 2 churches in one that have their own little pendulum swings within them. And Yeah, sure, the progressive doesn't like to be categorized and defined, but the reality is that your theology is different from the mothership, and the mothership doesn't want you. It's never going to change. Leadership confirms that, and leadership that is underneath the more authoritarian style, as you said, Jim, that they don't know what to do. They buckle. I had a leader, like top level union leader, literally had lunch with him the other day, and he said there, and I was talking about a recent AUC at Australian Union meetings they had, where the leadership seemed to have promised everything leading up to it, and nothing was done. And he said their hands are tied. And these leaders are great people that I grew up with, went to uni with, went to college with, have lived as neighbors in the same community, great guys with lots of hope for change. And here they are.
Yeah.
He said he wouldn't come on this show because he too has to toe the line. Their
Right.
hands are tied, were his exact words. And I thought, this eternal, and I'd love your thoughts on this, eternal progressive Adventist notion that they're even a slightly cray-cray gospel Adventist version is going to somehow shine and have a real home in the Adventist church. Where do they derive this incredible sense of hope from?
I just think it's internal to them. They're just the forever optimist. And there's nothing wrong with that, right? That's a great place to be, other than being a pessimist, right? Because you're going to be a lot happier person. But they're optimists who are divorced from reality.
Yeah.
You could be an optimist, but look at reality and look what's coming your way and say, how am I going to deal with this when this comes? And that's probably what they should do, and they're not. But they're living, and often I teach business administration at a college, and when we get to strategy and establishing objectives and goals, etc., I always say hope is not an objective. We don't use hope. We use other language. And so these Adventists are just hoping. You're right, they're hoping. But that hope is not a strategy. They're just going to let themselves be managed by it. And so
hope is not a strategy. I love that.
It's not, but that's what they're living by.
Yeah.
But they're divorced from reality. If they just look at reality and
Yes.
say, I can still have my hope. Okay, you can still have your hope, but look at reality and say, okay, but this is really what's going to happen. Now, how are we going to react when it does happen?
Yes.
And that's what they're not doing.
Yes. 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 In fact, I'm suddenly pinging with lots of words that have come back to me from these guys, where they say things, even that Stephen said earlier, the church needs to change its testimonial baptismal vows. That is hope.
Right.
But hope isn't a strategy.
No, it's not.
What are you going to do about that, Stephen, to bring that about?
Right.
And many progressive Adventists that have offered me hope since I was young in the early 80s, all on fire for bringing about this change that was necessary, because I saw all around me the Des Ford, the hundreds of ministers losing their jobs. My generation was affected by that in a real way.
Mm-hmm.
We went from a vibrant local community where the Jesus Gospel Adventists were doing music and taking us on excursions and having social evenings and rallies every month, and hundreds of kids would turn up from this vibrant, early 80s kind of Adventism, late 70s, early 80s, to the Ford thing happening and the trickle-down effect, and the pastors to literally, where did all these young pastors go? They'd gone.
Right.
In one conference alone in Adelaide, 25 or 27 young pastors left the church. And, it's terrible. And there's no accountability. But for some reason, the few that stayed, that are still, they're retired now, and they often watch the show, and they're very gospel. It's going to change, and they're in their 70s now. They're in their 70s, late 70s, early 70s. It's changing, Pete. It's going to change. I'm like, they're still positive. They're telling me that line. But I love what you've said there, Jim. Hope is not a strategy. They gave me hope, I call it
Right.
false hope because I now know, 40 years later, that they had no strategy. They just wanted to love Jesus and hey guys, but all of a sudden we would our lives changed, and the thing we looked forward to is once a month table tennis on a Tuesday night at the local Adventist Church Youth Hall. It went from vibrant to nothing, and there was no accountability, and both sides let everyone down. The progressives, they just wussed out and offered false hope and really would had no strategy, and then the conservatives were just tearing us apart, calling us tools of Satan, and we were just young kids in our late teens, early 20s. And I've watched for another 45 years on from that, and there's no change. There's this sense of boy, I love what you said there. I need to write it down. Hope is not a strategy.
Right. Right. It's not. It sounds good. It feels good, but it produces no action. And you're looking for action, and it's just not there.
We all want a sense of moving forward, personal growth, family growth, community growth, engaging with friends. We want life to become more abundant. And what I see in the teachings of Jesus is sage advice to make that happen. I want to, we'll wrap up soon, but if there are other gems to do with our topic, share them now. I would love to hear them. But then I want you to close with, because I have this great memory of you at the February 2024 former Adventist Fellowship, where I flew over and was there just for the weekend. I think I was there on the Friday, landed on the Friday, flew out on the Sunday, but had the best time. And you got up at near the end of and I've shared this story before, but you got up at the end of the program, and from the floor, someone was asking questions and asked you to get up and say something. And I remember you spoke with such passion and authority and calm and a testimony of what the gospel meant for you, and it was just golden. It was a golden moment I'll never forget. And everyone listened, and all eyes suddenly looked at you because you carried in your person and shone your actual beliefs in a way that was very clear that you lived it. And I'm wanting to, first, share any other quick gems of this whole membership thing. But then I want you just to close with, what is it about the gospel that you find so much heart, peace, contentment, abundance in? If you can just briefly share that. But yeah, I thought if you've got any more gems there, and while you're thinking on that and having a quick look at your computer, Justin Anonymous wrote that my SDA mother mentioned that SDAs need to go back to the gospel. And I said, so back to mainstream Orthodox Christianity. She didn't have words. And that's true. Adventists often think about some kind of heyday of the gospel within Adventism. It has never had the gospel. There's been people that might have understood it, but it has never gained traction within the Adventist Church.
Right.
Yeah. So any thoughts?
So I can give you a couple thoughts. One is just having this conversation with you, like we said earlier offline, just reminded me that this new annual report is out there, and I'm going to redo Defeating Adventism number 139. I'm going to add to some of the existing facts and data that are already produced. And I've been taking notes along the many months. I'm looking at my spreadsheet over here that I've got some notes on, reminding myself, hey, next time do this, or next time. So I've got other aspects of these numbers that I'm going to look at, analyze, and produce. But I still think the large takeaway from all this is the membership numbers are complete fiction. The Seventh-day Adventist Church will not revise them because it's going to have a negative motivational effect on its entire population. They don't want that. So they can't do it. They won't do it. They know they need to. But the problem keeps getting worse every year. Don't know what they're going to do. Financially, I see a financial crisis on the horizon. They got divisions that do not need to exist. They got divisions that are bleeding members. And the ones that are bleeding members are the ones that give the most tithe. The ones that are gaining members have little tithe. So there's a financial cash crunch. It's either already here and they're scurrying around and moving the pieces around as we speak, or it's going to come shortly. And we're gonna see churches close. We're gonna see churches consolidated. We're gonna see pastors and other staff relieved. This is what I think is going to happen. So I think, like I said, they're about 2 decades behind the Jehovah's Witnesses at this point in terms of the downfall of the church.
Say that again. You think? Sorry, you think there'll be how many decades?
They're about 2 decades behind
Wow.
the Jehovah's Witnesses. Now, the Adventist Church is not going to go away. The Jehovah's Witness Church didn't go away. I don't predict the Adventist Church is going to go away, but I predict they're going to have some problems, and that problems is going to force them into some reorganizational issues. And some of them I think we will see. Some of them I don't think that we're going to see, because they don't want the negative press, but they're going to do things budgetary, financial, internally, gradually. That's good. They need to save dollars. And so I would just say, if I was an Adventist, I'd have my ear, I'd be listening for, okay, what's the church doing? Because they need to save dollars. And if this is an indicator again that, we're going from nice looking hardbacks to these really cheap softbacks, just another data point. So anyway, you asked the gospel.
Yes.
I remember when I first started studying apologetics and I realized what the gospel was. And the gospel is 1 Corinthians 15:1-4. The message of the Christian church is the death, burial, and resurrection of Christ, and what that means to the lost world in terms of what you need to do as a Christian that knows that message and is preaching to that lost world, that they need to repent of their sins, because Jesus died on the cross for all of your sins, and he rose the 3rd day as evidence that he was triumphant over sin. The gospel message is that simple. And to preach any other gospel message other than that, because I run into all kinds of members, not just Adventists, but other groups who say, well, we preach that and then some. The Bible doesn't allow for that. Galatians 1:6-9 says, if you preach any other gospel other than the gospel that I preach, that's the Apostle Paul, who gave us 1 Corinthians 15:1-4, which he got as divine revelation from Jesus Christ, Galatians 1. If you look around 10 and 11, you'll see where that came from. To preach any other gospel message than that is to be twice cursed. But yet when you look at that gospel message, it's simple. What is it? It's that the scriptures predicted there was going to be a Messiah. This Messiah, Jesus, was going to come. He was going to go to his people first, which were the Jews who rejected him. But he died on the cross for sins. And when the Jews rejected him, us Gentiles were allowed to join this Jewish religion and have the benefits of it, of Christ dying on the cross for the forgiveness of our sins. We don't have a Day of Atonement anymore, where sins need to be covered over every year. Because when Christ died on the cross, all of our sins, past, present, and future, were paid for. Because if they weren't, we would have to have a Day of Atonement every year. But our sins are paid for. That's why we don't have any more sacrifices of a Messiah or a Day of Atonement. But the simplicity of it, that's what struck me, Peter. It's simple. What is it about the death, burial, and resurrection of Christ? And that's the message to preach. It's a simple message to preach. Some find it very hard to accept, and I understand that because it's just spiritual warfare, but it's simple and it's plain.
Wow. Thank you, James. As always, I've loved having a conversation with you. And, I've said this before, but, I'd love to get you back every 4 to 6 weeks and we can just shoot the breeze and pick a topic, because, we didn't have bullet points. We didn't prepare, but there have been some nuggets of gold in today's chat that I hope those watching have really enjoyed. And please, in the comments and like buttons and love hearts, wherever you're watching from, send them up for James right now. And don't forget to go and check out his channel, which is, I'll bring it up on the screen, which is Defeating Adventism, Academy Apologia. Is Academy Apologia the name of the channel, and then Defeating
Yes.
Adventism is part of the series within that.
Yes.
And if you want to learn about what we've been talking today in lots of wonderful detail, go and look at number 139. And tomorrow we continue on with our own gospel program. Every week we run a program on YouTube with our own channel now called Good News Fellowship. And boy, I've got some dreams for Good News Fellowship that are different to what you may think, everybody, from a very egalitarian approach. Instead of a top-down hierarchical level, we're building a great little community there that just loves chatting about the good news, teachings of Jesus every week. And you do need to watch it, though. It's no longer streamed out of SDA&A. It has its own channel. So you need to search on youtube.com/@ Gospel Good News Fellowship, and you'll find us there. And that's tomorrow at the same time we started today's program. And it is our guest is another James Giles. He will be our special guest tomorrow. Always enjoy when he comes on the program too. So thank you, everybody, for watching. As always, there's been some great conversations going on there today, very much about the topic we've been talking about. Sometimes, Jim, I'm watching the comments, I'm thinking they're talking about some stuff that's totally not what we're talking about. I don't mind. That's good. It's part of community building. But today, everyone has been very on track. Again, don't forget, Rochelle has reminded me here, go and vote for SDA&A Book Club. Rochelle is Rochelle, is Rochelle anonymous and Justin anonymous? Is there some link up there? Is there some connection? Let me know. But go and vote. There's, I think, going to be 4 options coming up over the next few days. And I don't think book club's on tomorrow, is it, Rochelle? Let me know that as well. Thank you again, James. What a blast. And take care, and look forward to catching up with you again very soon.
We will. Thank you.
See you later.
See you.